The park hummed with the vibrant energy of a sunny afternoon. Children's laughter echoed through the air as they chased one another near the pond, their carefree joy bringing a smile to the faces of nearby parents. A man tossed a frisbee to his dog, while a group of friends gathered under the shade of an old oak tree enjoying their picnics. The scene was one of simple happiness, an escape from the chaos of daily life. Yet, amidst this lively backdrop, an undercurrent of tension began to form, unnoticed by most. Malik, a black teen known for his quiet diligence, strolled through the park with a small bag slung over his shoulder. He'd just finished helping his neighbor carry groceries and was heading home, his mind preoccupied with an upcoming math exam. Though he often stood out due to his unique sense of responsibility, most in the neighborhood saw him as just another teenager, unaware of the depth of character beneath his unassuming exterior. As Malik neared the pond, his attention was drawn to a small boy playing near the water's edge. The child, about 6 or 7 years old, was laughing gleefully as he bent to splash the rippling surface. His brightly colored clothes and golden curls caught the sunlight, a stark contrast to the murky water he teetered dangerously close to. Malik's brows furrowed. The boy appeared unsupervised, his parents or guardians nowhere in sight. On the other side of the park, James Caldwell, a high-profile CEO of a Fortune 500 company, was deeply engrossed in a heated phone call. His suit jacket hung neatly over the back of the bench as he gestured emphatically, oblivious to his son's absence. James was the kind of man who commanded attention, a self-made millionaire with a reputation for being unshakable in the face of adversity. Yet, here in this moment, his focus was consumed by business, his son's carefree playfulness far from his thoughts. As Malik continued walking, the laughter near the pond suddenly turned into gasps. A woman screamed, "Oh my God, he's fallen in!" Malik froze, his heart pounding, as he turned to see the child flailing in the water. The boy's earlier joy had turned to panic, his small arms splashing wildly as he struggled to keep his head above the surface. The shallow edge of the pond had given way to a deeper section, and the boy was quickly sinking. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Onlookers gathered near the edge, their fear immobilizing them. Parents clutched their own children tightly, unwilling to risk the danger. Malik didn't hesitate. Dropping his bag, he sprinted toward the pond. Kicking off his shoes, he dove into the water without a second thought. The cold shock of the water only fueled his determination as he swam toward the struggling boy. "Hold on! I've got you!" Malik shouted, his strong strokes propelling him forward. Reaching the boy, he wrapped an arm around his waist, keeping his head above the water as he expertly navigated back to the shore. The crowd erupted into applause as Malik pulled the child onto solid ground, laying him gently on the grass. The boy coughed and sputtered, his small chest heaving as he gasped for air. Malik knelt beside him, rubbing his back gently to help him breathe. Relief swept through the crowd, but none felt it more deeply than James Caldwell, who had finally realized the gravity of what had happened. Spotting his son from across the park, James dropped his phone and ran toward the scene, his face pale and his breath shallow. "Caleb!" he called out, dropping to his knees beside the boy. Scooping his son into his arms, he held him tightly, his earlier composure shattered. Looking up at Malik, James met the teen's calm, steady gaze. "You saved my son," James said, his voice trembling with gratitude and disbelief. For the first time in years, the powerful CEO found himself at a loss for words. Little did he know, this encounter would set in motion a series of events that would change both their lives forever. Malik was the kind of teen everyone in his neighborhood admired, but perhaps didn't fully understand. At 16, his days were packed with responsibilities that most kids his age wouldn't even think about. His mornings started early, helping his younger siblings get ready for school, while his mother worked a double shift at the local diner. After school, he ran errands for elderly neighbors, tutored younger kids in math, and worked part-time at a nearby grocery store. It wasn't that he had to do all of this. He chose to, because that's just who he was. Though his family didn't have much in terms of material wealth, they were rich in love and values. Malik's mother had always taught him that helping others was both a privilege and a duty. Her stories of her father, a volunteer firefighter, inspired Malik's dream of one day becoming an EMT or firefighter himself. Helping people in their worst moments is the most important job in the world, she'd told him. Those words stuck with Malik, driving him to excel academically despite the challenges stacked against him. Even with his full schedule, Malik managed to maintain high grades. He loved science, especially biology, and his teachers often praised his quick thinking and problem-solving skills. But what stood out most about him was his integrity. Malik never hesitated to stand up for what was right, even if it meant putting himself on the line. That integrity, paired with his sharp mind and kind heart, made him a natural leader, even if he didn't realize it yet. On the other side of town, James Caldwell's life was the picture of corporate success. As the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company, James had built an empire through grit and relentless ambition. His days were consumed with back-to-back meetings, calls with investors, and endless travel. The only thing faster than his rise to the top was the pace of his everyday life. His wealth afforded his family every luxury, sprawling homes, private schools, exotic vacations, but it also came with a cost: time. James's son, Caleb, felt that cost acutely. At 7 years old, Caleb was bright and curious, but he often found himself alone, yearning for his father's attention. His mother, while loving, was equally busy with charity events and social obligations, leaving Caleb to fill his days with solitary play or mischief. He wasn't a bad kid, just lonely, craving connection in a world where adults seemed perpetually distracted. The Caldwell family's wealth had created an invisible barrier between them and the rest of the world. They lived in a bubble of privilege, far removed from the struggles of everyday people like Malik and his family. While James believed he was providing the best life for his son, Caleb's growing sense of isolation hinted at cracks in the perfect image of their family life. Two lives couldn't have been more different. Malik's, grounded in resilience and community. Caleb's, wrapped in privilege and loneliness. Yet fate had a way of crossing paths that seemed impossible. Malik's grit and compassion would soon collide with Caleb's vulnerability in a moment that would challenge everything both families thought they knew about each other and themselves. It was a scene that unfolded in seconds, but felt like an eternity to those who witnessed it. 7-year-old Caleb Caldwell, bored and unsupervised, wandered too close to the edge of the park's small pond. His curiosity, as always, got the better of him. He leaned over to watch the shimmering water, mesmerized by the fish darting beneath the surface. In his excitement, he lost his footing. A collective gasp rippled through the park as Caleb toppled forward, hitting the water with a splash. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Onlookers froze, unsure of what to do. The pond wasn't deep, but Caleb, panicked and flailing, struggled to stay afloat. His small cries for help pierced the air, stirring chaos among the crowd. Amid the commotion, Malik dropped the grocery bag he was carrying. He had just finished an errand for his mother and was heading home when he heard the screams. Instinct kicked in before he even realized it. He sprinted toward the pond, weaving through the gathered crowd, his sneakers pounding against the gravel path. Without hesitation, Malik plunged into the water, his body cutting through the cold like a knife. The pond was murkier than it looked from the shore. Malik fought against the resistance of the water, reaching Caleb in moments. "It's okay, I've got you," he reassured the boy, his voice calm and steady, despite his own racing heart. Caleb clung to him, his small arms wrapping around Malik's neck in desperation. Malik adjusted his grip, ensuring Caleb's head stayed above water as he swam them both back to the shore. By the time Malik hoisted Caleb out of the pond, his arms ached and his clothes were drenched. He gently set the boy on the grass, checking him over for injuries. Caleb coughed up water, but was otherwise unharmed. Malik stayed by his side, speaking softly to keep him calm. Moments later, a sleek black SUV screeched to a halt near the park entrance. James Caldwell emerged, his phone in one hand and an air of impatience surrounding him. He scanned the scene, his eyes landing on Caleb, soaked and shivering, surrounded by a cluster of onlookers. Relief flooded his face as he rushed toward his son. James crouched down, pulling Caleb into a tight embrace. "Are you okay? What happened?" he asked, his voice tinged with a mix of fear and frustration. Caleb, still catching his breath, pointed toward Malik. "He saved me," the boy whispered. James turned toward Malik, his initial reaction one of dismissive indifference. Drenched and wearing plain, worn clothes, Malik didn't fit James's preconceived notion of a hero. Without a second glance, James muttered a curt, "Thank you," before turning back to Caleb, focusing entirely on his son. But the murmurs of the crowd grew louder. "That boy jumped in without thinking twice," one woman said, her voice carrying over the gathered onlookers. "He risked his life to save your son," another added. James straightened, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. He turned back to Malik, his expression shifting from distracted gratitude to something deeper. "You saved him?" James asked, his tone now tinged with awe. Malik nodded, his modesty evident in the way he avoided James's gaze. "I just did what anyone would do," he said quietly, brushing off the attention. James stared at the teenager standing before him, soaked to the bone, shivering slightly, but steadfast and composed. For the first time, James truly saw him, not as just a kid from the neighborhood, but as the person who had saved his son's life. James Caldwell, still clutching his son, turned back toward Malik with a newfound urgency. The murmurs of the crowd echoed in his mind, each voice recounting the teen's bravery in a way that painted a clearer picture of the moment he had almost dismissed. He stepped forward, the usual air of authority in his demeanor softened by genuine gratitude. "Son," James began, his voice steady but laced with emotion, "I need to thank you properly. You saved my boy's life." Malik, still wringing water from his shirt, looked up and gave a small nod. "I'm just glad he's okay," he said, his tone humble. There was no self-congratulation in his voice, no hint of a need for recognition, only relief that the child was safe. James crouched to Caleb's eye level and said, "This young man saved you, Caleb. What do you say?" The boy, still shaken but recovering, stepped forward and hugged Malik tightly. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice trembling. Malik patted Caleb's back lightly, offering a reassuring smile. As the crowd began to disperse, James stayed behind with Malik, intent on learning more about the teenager who had shown such courage. "What's your name?" he asked. "Malik," the teen replied, shrugging slightly, as if reluctant to make a big deal out of the situation. James motioned toward a nearby bench. "Sit with me for a minute, Malik. I'd like to know more about you." Reluctantly, Malik agreed. Sitting across from the billionaire, his straightforward answers revealed a lot more than he intended. James learned that Malik was not just brave, but also resourceful and driven. The teen spoke of juggling schoolwork with part-time jobs to help his family, his dream of becoming a firefighter, and his love for his community. James listened intently, his expression shifting from polite interest to genuine admiration. Here was a young man who, despite facing challenges James could hardly imagine, had stepped up in a moment of crisis without hesitation. What struck him most was Malik's humility. He neither boasted about his actions nor sought recognition. For Malik, helping Caleb was simply the right thing to do. As Malik spoke, James felt a wave of discomfort, an internal reckoning. He realized how consumed he had been with his business, wealth, and social standing, often at the expense of meaningful connections. The teen's actions were a stark contrast to the superficial values that had dominated his own life. James saw the disparity between his son's sheltered existence and Malik's hard-fought resilience. For the first time in years, James Caldwell felt the urge to reflect, not just on the values he wanted to instill in Caleb, but also on the kind of person he wanted to be. In Malik's unassuming courage, James found a wake-up call he hadn't known he needed. As the weight of the day's events settled in, James Caldwell knew a simple "thank you" wouldn't suffice. He turned to Malik with determination. "You've done something extraordinary today, Malik. I want to help you achieve whatever it is you're striving for." Malik tilted his head, unsure how to respond. "I'm not looking for anything, sir. I just did what anyone would have done." James shook his head firmly. "No, Malik, not everyone would have risked what you did. Tell me about your dreams. What do you want to do?" Malik hesitated before answering. "I want to be a firefighter. It's something I've wanted since I was a kid, helping people when they need it most." Moved by the teen's sincerity, James announced his intentions. "I'll cover the costs of your education and training, anything you need to reach that goal. And if there's anything your family needs, I'll make sure they have it." The offer stunned Malik. His first instinct was to decline, uncomfortable with such generosity. "I appreciate that, Mr. Caldwell, but I don't want charity." James smiled. "This isn't charity. It's an investment in you, in your future, and in the kind of world I want my son to grow up in." After some thought, Malik agreed on one condition. "If you're serious about helping me, then help others in my community too. There are kids like me who just need a chance, and families who could use a break." James nodded, inspired by Malik's selflessness. "Consider it done. I'll set up a scholarship fund and a community program in your neighborhood. And if you're willing, I'd like you to help me shape it, to ensure it makes a real difference." True to his word, James launched the initiative within weeks, providing resources for educational and career opportunities in underserved communities. Malik's name became synonymous with courage and integrity, inspiring countless others to strive for change. Meanwhile, the Caldwell family underwent its own transformation. James began prioritizing his family over work, spending more time with Caleb and involving him in the community projects inspired by Malik's story. Caleb looked up to Malik as a role model, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. For Malik, the opportunities opened by James's gratitude were life-changing, but he remained grounded. He saw his achievements not as personal victories, but as a chance to uplift others. Together, Malik and the Caldwell family began shaping a legacy of kindness, equity, and mutual respect, proof that a single act of courage could ripple into transformative change. Months after the life-changing incident, Malik stood on a stage in a packed community center, the room buzzing with anticipation. His name was now well known in the neighborhood, not only as the brave teen who saved a life, but as a symbol of hope and resilience. The CEO, James Caldwell, and his son Caleb stood nearby, ready to unveil a new initiative that would bring lasting change to their city. As Malik stepped up to the microphone, he glanced at the faces in the audience, friends, family, and neighbors who had supported him through thick and thin. His voice was steady, but emotional as he began. When I acted that day, I wasn't thinking about recognition or rewards. I just wanted to help. But what I didn't realize was how much that moment would change not just my life, but the lives of so many others. He paused, looking toward James, who nodded in encouragement. Mr. Caldwell's generosity wasn't just about helping me. It was about believing in what one act of kindness can inspire. Together, we've created something that will give opportunities to others who might feel like their dreams are out of reach. The event marked the launch of a new scholarship program named The Bridge to Tomorrow, designed to provide educational and career opportunities for underprivileged youth. The program was a direct result of Malik's insistence that the help he received should extend to others. Alongside the scholarships, the initiative also included mentorship programs, career training, and resources for families in need. James Caldwell took the stage next, his tone reflective and heartfelt. Malik taught me a lesson that no amount of business success ever could, that courage and selflessness can create ripples far beyond what we imagine. As a leader, and as a father, I've learned the importance of not just building wealth, but building communities. This program is just the beginning. The event concluded with Malik and Caleb unveiling the initiative's logo, a bridge symbolizing connection and hope. The applause was deafening, the room filled with optimism and inspiration. As the crowd began to disperse, Malik stood by James and Caleb, watching families and young people explore the resources the initiative offered. Caleb turned to Malik with admiration. "You've changed so much for so many people." Malik smiled, his voice quiet but firm. Sometimes, a single act of courage doesn't just save a life. It changes many others forever. The three of them stood side by side, a testament to the power of kindness and collaboration, ready to face the future together.